Hello, and welcome to our oral session regarding considerations for HyFlex team-based learning courses. My name is Brandon Taylor, and I'm an instructional designer at Rush University, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Dr. Princess Currents, who is the Director of Curriculum and Education at Rush University's Medical College. We'll start by providing a brief overview of a typical team-based learning scenario. In case some of you may not be familiar with team-based learning, this sequence is from Clark et al. 2018 and is very common among all types of team-based learning scenarios. You typically would have a orientation to team-based learning. Each module of team-based learning would include pre-class preparation, readiness assurance, where students take an individual quiz and then take the same quiz as teams and have an opportunity to get additional feedback and provide feedback to the instructor in the form of appeals. Then there's an application exercise where students work in groups or the teams on a application type exercise. And throughout the process, there's intermittent peer feedback and evaluation. Next, provide some of the key principles for both team-based learning and HyFlex courses. The fundamental principles for team-based learning include groups should be formed in a rational manner. Students are accountable both to themselves and to their teams. The team assignments must also not only involve helping learn with the content, but also involve team development. And the students must receive frequent and immediate feedback where possible. The HyFlex core principles include learner control, where students can choose to take a course or participate in a course in live in person, live online, asynchronously online, or any combination thereof, and that there will be equivalent learning no matter how the students choose to participate in the HyFlex course, and that the resources in the HyFlex course can be reusable in various modalities that students may participate. And finally, students have access to all the resources in the course regardless of how they participate in a HyFlex course. Here are some sample considerations for team-based learning HyFlex courses or HyFlex team-based learning courses. In your orientation, you want to make sure you provide practice for students in the various modalities that they might participate in. Also, in the pre-class preparation, you may want to include live options as well, as most pre-class is asynchronous and independent. The readiness assurance, you'd want to have a way that students can share their input for the team-based RATs, even though they may not participate in the live sessions. And similarly, you would want to do the same with the application exercise. Students can provide their input to their team ahead of time, even though they may not be able to participate in the live team-based learning. And in your peer evaluation, you'd want to make sure you can include an opportunity to provide feedback for students regarding how they participated via the different modalities. I'm sure you may have some additional considerations, and I'd be happy to discuss those. You could take some notes with that, and I will hand it over to my colleague.
Thanks, Brandon. Brandon gave you some great examples of things you should consider when you're adopting the HyFlex TBL model. His examples centered on structuring the student experiences across the three learner groups. I'm going to discuss course organization, learning delivery, and active learning implementation that you should consider if you're planning on implementing this model at your school. The COVID-19 pandemic has shifted a teaching landscape that requires educators to respond quickly and reimagine how to deliver class instruction in flexible modalities while maintaining learning outcomes. The HyFlex TBL model offers a strong advantage in its ability to switch between modalities without additional planning or reconceptualization. The pre-learning allows faculty to prepare for and maximize the in-class experience. With careful planning, faculty have the opportunity to interact and engage with students both online and in person at the same time. Here are my top 4 faculty considerations. 1. You want to segment your sessions into distinct blocks and follow up with a process activity. Your discrete micro learning blocks will vary based on how much time you have allotted for each activity and the overall class time. You want to make sure your class is not graded, but it's clear to the students that it's meant to be a practice activity, a self-check, ways for them to self-regulate their comprehension. The second consideration is to use a post-didactic process activity. This uses a micro knowledge text, such as quizzes, reflections, or group work, or problem sets, which allows students to know if they're on the right track. You have to make sure your instructions are clear and written. Written communications are particularly important for asynchronous students to follow along. Faculty can model how to think about or process a problem or identify appropriate solution. You should consider having problems or solutions to your problems and answers available at the end of each activity. One key thing is to consider the resource needs for your asynchronous learners, especially if they need to replicate what is presented in the in-class activity or use a model or it requires a practicum. The third consideration is to plan for a post-session assessment. These assessments should build on the in-class or face-to-face process activities and can serve as a formative assessment. These low-stakes knowledge checks can be a great alternative to participation grade schemas. You want to plan for a formal Q&A or debrief either at the start of your synchronous class, by posting an announcement through your LMS, or some other asynchronous means. Everyone should have the same amount of time to complete the post-session assessments. The fourth consideration, and one of the most important, is to develop a comprehensive communication plan. Consider building a communication plan that engages all the learner groups during the activities and the didactic. Developing a mechanism or mechanisms for post-course activities really allow for asynchronous support and creates dedicated opportunities for students to get their question answered. An example would be having a dedicated student question Slack channel, a micro team site, or a discussion board. It may be difficult for you to facilitate engagement with your students when you're managing in-person classes, so plan for help to monitor your synchronous chat. Rotating who you call on is also important, so you have to have a deliberate strategy of rotating who you call on. This helps all students feel included and their contributions valued. Lastly, don't forget to record your live. It's a sample activity planning guide for your HyFlex TBL session. First, you should have a clear learning goal. This helps frame to the student what the expectations are and should be clear in the pre-learning materials. For your online asynchronous learners, they would watch the recorded live sessions or previously recorded sessions and begin to work through the process activity questions. On behalf of Brandon and myself, thank you for your time and attention. We hope you found these considerations useful, and good luck!